Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was held back during training. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The sensation of One for All was not what Izuku Midoriya had expected. He had spent 10 months moving trash, hauling refrigerators, and screaming at the ocean until his throat was raw. He had imagined the power as a battery, or perhaps a fuel tank he could tap into. He expected it to feel like strength, like the satisfying burn of a muscle pushed to its limit, only amplified 1,000 times over. He was wrong. It didn't feel like strength. It felt like an execution. The moment he had clenched his buttocks and screamed smash from the depths of his heart, his right arm had ceased to be a part of his biology, and had become a cannon. The recoil didn't just push back, it shattered. He felt the humerus snap like a dry twig, the sound sickeningly loud even over the roar of the wind. He felt the muscles tear, shredding like wet paper under the sheer, unbridled kinetic force he had unleashed. But the 0-pointer was down. The massive, metal titan that had eclipsed the sun and threatened the nice girl with the gravity quirk was crumbling backward, its faceplate caved in by the fist of a quirkless boy who had borrowed a god's power. Then came the fall. Izuku was suspended in the air, a tiny speck of green against the vast blue canvas of the mock city's sky. The adrenaline that had fueled his jump was evaporating, leaving behind a cold, lucid terror. He was hundreds of feet in the air. He had no way to land. His right arm was a dangling ruin of purple and red. His legs, broken from the initial launch, trailed uselessly beneath him. I'm going to die, the thought drifted through his mind, strangely detached. I saved her, but I have 0 points. And now I'm going to die. The ground rushed up to meet him, a gray slab of concrete promising an end to his very short journey as a hero. He tried to lift his left arm, his only remaining limb that functioned, to fire a blast of wind pressure, to cushion the impact. He knew it would break that arm too. He would be a torso, a limbless trunk on the pavement, but he might survive. He gritted his teeth, tears streaming from his eyes, mixing with the snot and the dust. One last time. Just one more smash. Slap! The world lurched. The wind stopped howling. The terrifying velocity vanished, replaced by a nauseating weightlessness. Izuku floated, spinning gently, inches above the jagged debris. Beside him, hovering and looking green in the face, was the girl. Uraraka. Her fingertips were pressed together, her cheeks puffed out as she fought back vomit. Release! She choked out. Gravity returned, but it was kind. Izuku dropped the final 6 inches, hitting the ground with a wet thud. The mercy of the landing, however, did nothing to dampen the agony of his injuries. The moment his body settled, the pain caught up with him. It was a white-hot spike driving through his shoulder and hips, a sensory overload that turned his vision into a kaleidoscope of black spots and flashing lights. Aargh! The scream ripped from his throat, raw and animalistic. He couldn't help it. It felt like his bones were made of molten glass. He tried to curl into a ball, a natural instinct for protection, but the movement only ground the shattered bone ends together, eliciting a fresh wave of torture that made him gag. Time's up. President Mick's voice boomed over the speakers, a cheerful, electronic sound that felt mocking against the backdrop of Izuku's suffering. The siren wailed. The exam was over. Izuku stared up at the sky, his chest heaving, his breath coming in ragged, shallow gasps. 0 points, his mind whispered. I failed. I failed All Might. I failed Mom. Shadows fell over him. Other examinees were gathering, their footsteps crunching on the rubble. Did you see that? Someone whispered, sounding horrified. He took out the 0-pointer in one hit. Yeah, but look at him. He looks like roadkill. What kind of quirk does that to you? A borrowed one, Izuku thought deliriously. A quirk too big for the cup. Make way! Move aside, dearies! The crowd parted. A small, hunched figure in a white lab coat shuffled forward, using a syringe-shaped cane. Recovery girl. The youthful heroine. To Izuku, she looked like an angel. She stopped beside him, her eyes narrowing behind her visor. She didn't look impressed. She looked deeply, profoundly disturbed. Oh my goodness, she murmured, kneeling beside his head. Her gloved hands hovered over his arm, then his legs. Comminuted fractures. Muscle avulsion. Severe hematoma. Son, you didn't just use your quirk, you let it eat you alive. I had to. Izuku rasped, the taste of copper in his mouth. Save her. Save your breath, she ordered sharply. Her tone wasn't the grandmotherly sweetness he expected. It was clinical and cold. If I heal this all at once, the stamina drain might stop your heart. I have to do this in stages. She leaned down. Her lips puckered. Smooch. The kiss landed on his forehead. If the injury was fire, the healing was ice. A wave of exhaustion so profound it felt like death washed over him. His body's energy reserves were siphoned away instantly to fuel the accelerated cell division. He felt the bones knitting together, a sensation like itchiness deep under the skin, magnified until it was almost painful in its own right. His vision tunneled. The blue sky turned gray, then black. The last thing he heard was Recovery Girl speaking into a communicator, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. Nizu. We have a situation, Alpha. Prepare the ICU. And get All Might on the line. I want to know what he was thinking. The smell of antiseptic was the first thing to return. Izuku blinked his eyes open. He was staring at a white-tiled ceiling. The hum of medical machinery was a steady rhythm in his ears. He tried to sit up, but his body felt heavy, as if his blood had been replaced with lead. Easy, Tiger. Izuku turned his head. Sitting in a chair beside his bed was a skeleton. No, not a skeleton. Tashinori Yagi. All Might. The symbol of peace was slumped in the plastic chair, looking smaller than Izuku had ever seen him. His large, yellow suit hung off his emaciated frame like a tarp over a scarecrow. His eyes, usually hidden in shadow, were visible, sunken and rimmed with red. All Might, Izuku whispered. He tried to lift his hand, and realized his right arm was encased in a heavy-duty cast, elevated in a sling. His legs were bandaged tight. The exam. The points. Rest, young Midoriya, All Might said softly. He didn't do his usual boisterous laugh. He didn't transform. He just leaned forward, clasping his bony hands together. You did incredible things out there. I have 0 points, Izuku said, the reality crashing down on him. Tears pricked his eyes. I wasted it. You gave me this power, and I wasted it on the first day. You saved a life, All Might corrected him, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. You acted when others froze. That is the essence of a hero. But I'm not a hero, Izuku sobbed, the emotional dam breaking. I'm a patient. Look at me. I threw one punch and I'm in the hospital. The door to the infirmary slid open with a sharp hiss. He's right, you know. Recovery Girl walked in. She wasn't alone. Behind her walked Principal Nizu, the chimera creature looking impeccably dressed in a suit, and a man in black who looked like he hadn't slept in a decade. All Might stiffened. Principal Nizu. Aizawa. Tashinori, Nizu greeted pleasantly, though his beady black eyes were unreadable. He hopped up onto the foot of Izuku's bed, looking down at the boy. And this must be Izuku Midoriya. Principal Nizu. Izuku stammered, trying to wipe his eyes with his good hand. It's an honor. The honor is mine, Nizu squeaked. Though I wish we were meeting under less crunchy circumstances. The man in black, Aizawa, leaned against the wall near the door, crossing his arms. He stared at Izuku with dark, analytical eyes that made Izuku feel like a specimen under a microscope. Let's not beat around the bush, Recovery Girl said, walking to the side of the bed and picking up a chart. She slapped it against her palm. I've been the school nurse at UA for 40 years. I have seen burns, cuts, broken bones, and psychological trauma. But I have never seen a student self-destruct so thoroughly in an entrance exam. She turned the chart to face All Might. Look at the stress fractures, Tashinori. Even after I healed him, the bone density is compromised. If he does that again, even one more time, he risks permanent nerve damage. If he does it 3 times, he loses the arm. The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed. He can learn control, All Might pleaded, standing up. He's only had the power for a few hours. Give him time. We are a school, not a hospital. the man in black spoke up. His voice was gravelly and tired. We put students in danger intentionally. That is the curriculum. Combat training. Disaster rescue. Villain simulations. If his starting line is blowing his limbs off, he will be dead before the sport festival. Izuku felt cold. He looked from Aizawa to All Might. Who are you? Shota Aizawa, the man said. Eraserhead. I teach Class 1A. Izuku's eyes widened. Eraserhead. The underground hero. He hates the media. He's pragmatic. Logical. You're the homeroom teacher for the hero course? Izuku asked. I am. Aizawa nodded. And I'm here to tell you that I cannot teach you. The words hit Izuku harder than the ground had. What? I expel students with zero potential, Aizawa said, his voice flat. It's not cruelty. It's kindness. It stops them from chasing a dream that will get them killed. And you, Midoriya? You are a walking death wish. You have power, yes. Maybe more raw power than All Might. But you have zero vessel to contain it. Putting you in the hero course would be negligent homicide on our part. No! Izuku cried out, attempting to sit up despite the pain. Please! I'll work harder. I'll figure it out. I just need a chance. We gave you a chance, Recovery Girl said sternly. You broke yourself. Now, Nisa interrupted, raising a paw. Let's not be so absolute. Emotions are running high. The principal walked up Izuku's legs, which was a strange sensation, and stood on his chest, looking him in the eye. Midoriya, your written exam scores were exemplary. 4th in the cohort. Your analysis of hero laws and quirk physics in the essay portion was doctoral level. You clearly have the mind for this. Hope flickered in Izuku's chest. And Nisa continued, your action to save Miss Uraraka earned you 60 rescue points. A massive score. Technically, you passed the exam with flying colors. I passed? Izuku breathed. Mathematically, yes, Nisa said. But pragmatically? No. The hope died again. The board of directors has been debating this for the last hour, Nisa explained. We are at an impasse. We cannot admit a student who requires major surgery after every class. Recovery Girl has formally refused to treat self-inflicted injuries of this magnitude on a daily basis. Without her support, you cannot survive the hero course. All Might looked down at his shoes. I tried to argue for you, young Midoriya. I told them about the beach. About your spirit. Spirit doesn't mend bones, All Might, Aizawa snapped. So, I'm rejected? Izuku asked, his voice trembling. It's over? Nisa smiled. It was a sharp, predatory smile. Not quite. Yue hates to waste potential. We have a compromise. Nisa pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket. We are offering you a place at Yue High School. But not in the Department of Heroics. Izuku stared at the paper. Department of General Education, Nisa said. Class 1C, General Ed? Izuku repeated. It was the department for the normal kids. The ones who didn't want to be heroes, or the ones who failed to get in. It was a regular high school experience. No costumes. No combat. No All Might. It is a holding pen, Aizawa said bluntly. You will attend regular classes. You will be barred from using your quirk on school grounds. If you are caught using it, you will be expelled immediately. However, Nisa added, there is a clause. The transfer protocol. If, during your time in Gen Ed, you can demonstrate to the faculty that you have gained control over your power, that you can use it without destroying your body, you may petition for a transfer into the hero course. Transfer? Izuku looked at All Might. All Might nodded slowly. It's a hard road, my boy. Few students ever make the jump. The sports festival is the main opportunity. But it buys you time. Time to build your body. Time to figure out the egg in the microwave without exploding the microwave. If you refuse, Aizawa said, your acceptance is rescinded entirely. You can go to a regular high school. Maybe become a police officer or a quirk analyst. Safer jobs. Izuku looked at his cast. He looked at the white ceiling. He thought about the 10 months on the beach. He thought about Kaken's laughter. He thought about the feeling of being useless. If he went to General Ed, he would be the reject student. He would be steps away from his dream, watching others live it. He would see Ida and Uraraka and Kaken wearing their costumes while he wore a PE uniform. But the alternative was giving up, and Izuku Midoriya did not know how to give up. He looked Nizu in the eye. The fear in his gut solidified into something cold and hard. "I'll take it," Izuku said. His voice was raspy, but steady. "I'll go to general education." Nizu clapped his paws together. "Excellent. I love a student with grit. Welcome to UA, Mr. Midoriya. Try not to break anything on your way out." The week following the exam was a strange purgatory. Izuku was discharged from the infirmary the next day with a heavy sling and strict instructions to rest. When he got home, Inko fainted. After she woke up, she cried for 3 hours, hydrated, and then cried for another 2. He told her the truth, mostly. He told her he got hurt saving someone. He told her he was accepted into general education because his quirk was too dangerous for the hero course right now. He didn't tell her about One for All. He didn't tell her that the number 1 hero was currently texting him emojis of small flexed biceps to cheer him up. The letter arrived 3 days later. Even though he knew the outcome, the formality of it was crushing. Izuku sat in his dark room, the holographic projection of All Might illuminating the posters of the very man speaking. "I am here!" The hologram bellowed. But unlike the standard recording, this All Might looked tired. It was clearly filmed after the infirmary meeting. "Young Midoriya, as we discussed, the path of a hero is not always a straight line." Izuku watched in silence. "You are assigned to Class 1C. But do not despair. The school motto is Plus Ultra for a reason. Go beyond. This is not a rejection, my boy. It is a challenge. Prove them wrong. Prove me right. Master this power, and force the door open." The hologram faded. Izuku sat in the dark for a long time. He looked at his hand. He clenched it into a fist, feeling the phantom pain of the break. "Prove them wrong," he whispered to the empty room. He grabbed his hand gripper from his desk and began to squeeze. 1, 2, 3. He wouldn't just attend General Ed. He would conquer it. April. The first day. The UA barrier was massive. The sheer scale of the school made Izuku feel like an ant. The main building was a fortress of glass and steel in the shape of an H, gleaming under the spring sun. Cherry blossoms fell around the students walking through the gates. It was a scene from a manga, idyllic and perfect. But Izuku felt like he was walking into enemy territory. He wore the gray UA uniform. It fit well, though he felt like an imposter wearing it. He adjusted his red tie, checking his reflection in a window. "DKU," Izuku flinched. He knew that voice. It was the sound of explosions and burnt sugar. He turned to see Katsuki Bakugo stomping toward him, hands in his pockets, his posture radiating aggression. "Keikaken," Izuku stammered. Bakugo stopped a few feet away, sneering. "I saw the class rosters posted online. I looked at 1A. You weren't there. I checked 1B. You weren't there." Bakugo leaned in, his grin sharp and cruel. "Did you finally get it through your thick skull? You're quirkless trash. Did you fail the exam? Or did you just run away?" Izuku took a deep breath. He had rehearsed this. "I passed the written exam, Kaken. But I'm in general education." Bakugo blinked. Then he let out a harsh, barking laugh. "General Ed? The loser course? So you're just a glorified civilian then?" "Ha! I knew it. All that big talk about I'm going to be a hero, and you ended up in the reject pile." "I'm not giving up," Izuku said, meeting Bakugo's eyes. It was hard, but he held his gaze. "I'm going to transfer. I just have to control my quirk first." "Your quirk?" Bakugo's face darkened. "Don't lie to me, Deku. You don't have a quirk. You're a pebble on the side of the road." "I do," Izuku said softly. "And I'll prove it." "Whatever," Bakugo spat, shoving past him. His shoulder checked Izuku hard, nearly knocking him over. "Stay out of my way. Don't think just because you're in the same building that we're equals. You're nothing." Izuku watched Bakugo walk toward the hero course entrance, the towering H structure. Izuku had to turn left, toward the side wing. The General Studies Wing. It was a physical representation of the divide. The heroes went to the main stage. The General Ed students went to the support beams. Izuku walked down the hallway of the General Studies Wing. It was normal. Disappointingly so. It looked like his middle school. Beige lockers. Tile floors. No statues of heroes. No excited chatter about costumes. The students here looked lethargic. Some looked disappointed. Others looked relieved. He found the door marked 1C. He slid it open. The classroom was standard. Rows of desks. A chalkboard. The students were already filtering in. Izuku found his seat, number 18, near the back by the window. The protagonist's seat, he thought with a bitter irony. He sat down and pulled out his notebook. Hero Analysis for the Future, number 14. He opened it to a blank page. He hesitated, then wrote, Goal, transfer to Hero Course. Is this seat taken? Izuku looked up. Standing beside the empty desk next to him was a boy who looked like he had personally offended the god of sleep. He had wild, gravity-defying purple hair and deep, dark bags under his eyes. His posture was a slouch that bordered on collapse. Oh. No, go ahead, Izuku said. The boy sat down, sighing as if the act of sitting was a great burden. He glanced at Izuku, his eyes scanning the notebook on the desk. Hero Analysis? The boy drawled. His voice was deep and tired. Izuku blushed, instinctively trying to cover the book. Just a hobby. You're one of those, huh? The boy said. Hero fanba who didn't make the cut? Izuku winced. Something like that. The boy turned fully in his seat, resting his chin on his hand. I'm Hitoshi Shinso. Izuku Midoriya. So, Midoriya, Shinso said, his eyes sharp despite his exhaustion. What happened? Written exam too hard? No, Izuku shook his head. I have a quirk. But it breaks my bones when I use it. The school said I was a liability. So they put me here until I can fix it. Shinso's eyebrows shot up. It breaks your bones? That's metal. Stupid, but metal. What about you? Izuku asked, grateful for the conversation. Shinso's expression closed off. The boredom returned, but it was brittle now. I failed the practical. The robots. Oh, my quirk. It doesn't work on inanimate objects, Shinso muttered, looking away. I can't brainwash a robot. So I got 0 combat points. Izuku's mind raced. Brainwash? A mental quirk? Against robots? That's unfair, Izuku blurted out. Shinso blinked. What? The entrance exam, Izuku said, his voice rising in agitation. It's completely biased toward physical, emitter, or mutant quirks with high offensive output. If your quirk is mental or focused on human targets, the test is impossible. Yui prides itself on rationality, but that test is irrational. They could be discarding future underground heroes or negotiators just because they can't punch metal. Izuku realized he was muttering and clamped a hand over his mouth. Sorry. I mutter. Shinso was staring at him. He looked stunned. For a moment, the dark bags under his eyes seemed less heavy. You're a weird guy, Midoriya, Shinso said, a small, genuine smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. But thanks. Most people just call my quirk villainous. Villainous? Izuku frowned. Brainwashing is amazing. You could defuse hostage situations without a fight. You could capture villains without property damage. It's a quintessential hero quirk. Shinso stared at Izuku as if he were an alien. Then, he let out a short chuckle. I think I'm going to like sitting next to you. The door slid open again. A man walked in. He wasn't a pro-hero. He was a middle-aged man in a brown suit, holding a briefcase. He looked like a salaryman. Good morning, the man said in a monotone voice. I am Mr. Ishiyama. I will be your homeroom teacher. Welcome to general education. Here, we focus on a comprehensive liberal arts education to prepare you for university. The class groaned collectively. Settle down, Ishiyama said. I know many of you wanted to be next door. Life is full of disappointments. Open your history textbooks to page 10. Izuku opened his book. He looked out the window. Across the courtyard, He could see the students of Class 1A walking out toward the gym in their blue PE uniforms. He saw a tall boy with glasses moving stiffly, Ida. He saw Uraraka chatting with a frog-like girl. He saw Bakugo yelling at someone. They were in the sun. He was in the shade. Aizawa had called this a holding pen. But Izuku looked at his hand, then at the notebook where he had written his goal. This isn't a holding pen, Izuku thought, his eyes narrowing. It's a forge. He glanced at Shinso, who was spinning a pen on his finger, looking at the hero course students with a mix of envy and resentment. And I'm not the only one who wants to break out. 1 week later. The dichotomy of Izuku's life was exhausting. From 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., he was a normal student. He studied English, math, and history. He ate lunch with Shinso, where they traded complaints about the system. He learned that Shinso was sarcastic, dry-witted, and deeply insecure about his villain quirk. From 3:30 p.m. to 6 p.m., he went to hell. Again, Izuku lay face down in the sand of Dagoba Beach, spitting out grit. I can't, he wheezed. You can, All Might said. The hero was in his skeletal form, sitting on a cooler, drinking a smoothie. The transfer protocol requires you to show physical mastery. You can't rely on the quirk to move your body. You need your body to move the quirk. Izuku pushed himself up. His arms trembled. All Might, the visualization, it's not working. The egg, the microwave, every time I try to tap into the power, it floods. It's all or nothing, All Might sighed. He stood up and walked over. Midoriya. You are treating the power like a weapon you carry. You need to treat it like a part of you. All Might poked Izuku's chest. When you move your arm, do you think contract bicep, relax tricep, rotate shoulder? No. You just move. The power must become that natural. That's easy for you to say, Izuku grumbled, wiping sweat from his forehead. You're a natural genius. True, All Might admitted shamelessly. But think about this. The faculty, Aizawa, Nizu, they are waiting for you to fail. They put you in Gen Ed because it is safe. Every day you don't transfer is a day they are proven right. Izuku grit his teeth. He thought about Aizawa's cold eyes. Liability. I'm not a liability, Izuku growled. Then show me, All Might said. 10 more laps. Sprint. Izuku ran. He ran until his lungs burned. He ran until the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the ocean in hues of violet and gold. 2 weeks later. The alarm. It was a Tuesday. It was raining. Izuku was in the middle of a math test in Class 1C. The room was quiet, save for the scratching of pencils and Shinso's rhythmic tapping of his foot. Then, the world broke. Warning. Level 3 security breach. All students evacuate immediately. The siren was a physical force, vibrating in their chests. Level 3? Shinso whispered, dropping his pencil. That means someone's on campus. Calm down. Mr. Ishiyama shouted, standing up. Standard evacuation protocol. Single file. Leave your bags. The hallway was chaos. Students from business, support, and Gen Ed poured out of classrooms. The alarm blared relentlessly. Izuku was shoved forward by the crowd. He grabbed Shinso's sleeve to keep them together. Where are we going? Shinso yelled over the noise. Cafeteria. Izuku yelled back. It's the designated shelter for the main building. They were swept into the massive cafeteria. Glass doors slammed shut behind them, sealing hundreds of students inside. The panic was palpable. Is it villains? How did they get past the barrier? Izuku sat at a table, his leg bouncing nervously. He pulled out his phone. No signal. The jammers were active. You're vibrating, Shinso noted, sitting across from him. Something's wrong, Izuku muttered. The barrier, the media yesterday. It feels coordinated. You think the press was a distraction? Yes. And if they're here, they want something specific. Or someone. All Might. Izuku felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. All Might was supposed to be teaching today. But where? Where is Class 1A? Izuku asked suddenly, scanning the crowded room. Shinso looked around. He stood up on the bench to see better. He sat back down, his face pale. I see 1B. I see the support classes. But Midoriya, 1A isn't here. Izuku felt the blood drain from his face. They had rescue training today, Izuku whispered. Off campus. The USJ, the unforeseen simulation joint? Shinso frowned. That's isolated. If the villains are attacking the main campus. No, Izuku realized with horror. If the villains triggered the alarm here, the pros would rush here. Leaving the USJ defenseless, he stood up. They're at the USJ. My friends are at the USJ. Sit down, Midoriya. Shinso hissed, grabbing his wrist. What are you going to do? Run there? You're in Gen Ed. You can't use your quirk. You'll get expelled. Or killed. But they could be dying, and the pros will handle it. Shinso snapped. That's their job. Our job is to survive. Izuku stared at Shinso. He saw the fear in the other boy's eyes. But he also saw logic. Slowly Izuku sat down. He put his head in his hands. He was right. He was useless here. He was just a student in a shelter, safe behind blast doors, while the people he admired were potentially fighting for their lives. This is what Aizawa wanted, Izuku thought bitterly. Safety. But it doesn't feel like safety. It feels like cowardice. The aftermath. The lockdown lasted 3 hours. When the doors opened, the atmosphere was heavy. Principal Nisa stood at the podium in the cafeteria. The threat has been neutralized, he announced. However, there was an attack on the USJ facility involving Class 1A. Gasps rippled through the room. Students were injured. Pro heroes Eraserhead and 13 are in critical condition. Izuku felt like he'd been punched. Aizawa. 13. But Nisa continued, thanks to the intervention of All Might, no student lives were lost. You are dismissed. Izuku didn't go home. He ran to the infirmary. He stopped at the door. It was a scene of devastation. Through the glass he saw Aizawa. The man was a mummy, completely wrapped in bandages, hooked up to IVs. He looked broken. He saw All Might sitting in the corner, holding his side, coughing blood into a handkerchief. And he saw them. Uraraka, Ida, Tsuyu, Mineta. They were sitting in the waiting area, covered in dust and scratches. They looked different. They weren't the bright-eyed students from the morning. They had the 1,000-yard stare of soldiers who had seen the front lines. They were quiet. Izuku stepped forward. Uraraka-san? Ida-kun? They looked up. Uraraka's eyes were red. Deku-kun, she whispered. She tried to smile, but it faltered. You heard? Are you okay? Izuku asked, his voice trembling. We survived, Ida said, staring at his hands. But we were helpless. Aizawa-sensei protected us, and they broke him. We couldn't do anything. It was terrifying, Uraraka admitted, hugging herself. Real villains, they wanted to kill us, Deku. They weren't like the robots. She looked at him, and for a second, Izuku saw a flash of relief in her eyes. I'm glad you weren't there, she said softly. Really? It was too much. If you had been there, with your arm. She trailed off. She didn't mean it maliciously. She meant it as a friend. But it cut Izuku deeper than any blade. If you were there, you would have been a burden. Izuku stepped back. He nodded. I'm glad you're safe. He turned and walked away. He walked down the corridor, his fists clenched so hard his nails dug into his palms. He wasn't part of their world anymore. They had faced death. He had faced a math test. The gap was widening. If he didn't bridge it soon, he never would. He pulled out his phone. He dialed a number All Might had given him, a number for emergencies only. It rang twice. Yeah? A gruff, elderly voice answered. Gran Torino? Izuku asked, his voice hard. That's me. Who's this? Izuku Midoriya. All Might's student. Ah. The crybaby. I need your help, Izuku said, ignoring the jab. All Might is teaching me to be strong. But he can't teach me how to fight. He can't teach me how to control the output. And you think I can? I know you can. All Might is terrified of you, the old man cackled. Smart kid. So, what's the problem? I'm in General Ed, Izuku said, stopping in the middle of the empty hallway. I was held back because I'm a liability. My friends almost died today, and I was safe in a cafeteria. I'm done being safe. There was a silence on the line. Liability, huh? Good word. Means you're dangerous. I want to be dangerous to villains, Izuku said. Not to myself. Meet me at the station in Kofu on Saturday, Gran Torino said sharply. Bring your costume. And a vomit bag. If you're late, I'm sending you home. I'll be there. Izuku hung up. He looked out the window at the setting sun. The sports festival was 2 weeks away. That was his window. That was his battlefield. He wasn't going to break his bones this time. He was going to break the system that put him here. Izuku Midoriya walked toward the exit, leaving the safety of the school behind. The long way around had just begun. The uniform was identical. That was the cruelest part of the illusion. Izuku Midoriya stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting the red tie. The gray blazer, the dark green trousers, the white dress shirt. It was the standard male uniform for UA High School. To an outsider walking down the street, he looked like any other prestigious student of the illustrious academy. He looked like someone with a bright, guaranteed future, but Izuku knew the truth. There were invisible seams in the fabric, stitched with disappointment. Izuku? Honey? Inko's voice drifted from the kitchen, laced with that perpetual, hovering anxiety she had developed since the entrance exam. Breakfast is ready. You don't want to be late for your first day. She hesitated on the words. She didn't say your first day of hero training. Just your first day. Coming, Mom, Izuku replied. He gave his reflection one last look. The boy staring back didn't look like the successor to the symbol of peace. He looked like a kid who had survived a car crash. His right arm was still in a compression sleeve under the blazer, a lingering reminder of the bones that had turned to powder. He grabbed his yellow backpack, the one that felt heavy with notebooks rather than gear, and headed out. The commute to UA was a sensory overload. The train was packed with students from other schools, all whispering as the UA kids boarded. Izuku kept his head down, gripping the handrail. Hey, check it out, a boy from a local technical high school whispered nearby. UA uniform. Think he's in the hero course? Maybe. He looks kinda plain, though. Bet he has a mental quirk. Or maybe he's just super smart. Izuku tightened his grip. If only you knew, he thought bitterly. I have the strongest quirk in the world, and I'm legally forbidden from using it. When he arrived at the massive glass gates of UA, the divide became physical. The flow of students split like a river hitting a stone. The confident, boisterous students, the ones radiating energy and power, headed toward the main H-shaped structures where classes 1A and 1B resided. Izuku drifted to the left. To the general education wing. The architecture here was just as modern, just as clean, but it lacked soul. It was quiet. The students walking alongside him didn't have that spark in their eyes. They walked with the slouch of the resigned. These were the kids who studied hard but missed the cutoff. The kids whose quirks were useful for society but useless for combat. He reached the door marked 1C. It was a large, sliding wooden door, indistinguishable from the ones in the hero wing, yet it felt heavier. Izuku took a deep breath. This is my reality now. Don't complain. Don't mope. Analyze. Adapt. Overcome. He slid the door open. The classroom was beige. That was the only word for it. The walls were beige, the desks were beige, and the atmosphere was beige. About 20 students were already seated. The chatter was low, polite, and utterly devoid of the chaotic energy he imagined was currently exploding in Class 1A. He found his seat, number 18. He sat down, placing his bag on the hook. To his right sat the boy from the entrance ceremony, Hitoshi Shinso. The purple-haired insomniac was leaning back in his chair, balancing a pencil on his nose, staring at the ceiling with an expression of supreme boredom. Morning, Izuku murmured, pulling out his notebook. Shinso didn't look down. You survived the walk of shame. Izuku flinched. Is that what we're calling it? We walked past the hero course to get here, Shinso drawled, the pencil wobbling. We see them. They don't see us. It's the ecosystem. We are the plankton, they are the whales. That's a bleak way to look at it, Izuku said. It's the realistic way. Shinso caught the pencil before it fell. He finally looked at Izuku, his dark eyes scanning Izuku's compression sleeve. So, you're the guy who broke his arm. Midoriya, right? Yeah, I'm Shinso. Welcome to Purgatory. Before Izuku could respond, the bell rang. The door slid open, and their homeroom teacher entered. Mr. Ishiyama was a stark contrast to the eccentric heroes that populated the UA staff. He was a balding, middle-aged man in a brown suit that had seen better days. He carried a leather briefcase and a thermos of what smelled like very strong coffee. Good morning, everyone, Ishiyama said, his voice a monotone drone. He set his briefcase down. I am Mr. Ishiyama. I teach modern literature and career guidance. Welcome to Class 1C. He picked up a piece of chalk. I know, Ishiyama continued, writing his name on the board without looking at the students. I know many of you are disappointed. You wanted to be next door. You wanted to be on the news. You wanted the costumes. The room went silent. A few students shifted uncomfortably. But let's look at the statistics. Ishiyama turned around, dusting his hands. The hero mortality rate is rising. The career lifespan of an average pro hero is less than 15 years before injury or retirement. General education UA graduates, however? You have a 98% acceptance rate into top-tier universities. You become politicians, lawyers, doctors, and quirk analysts. You are the ones who run the world while the heroes punch it. It was a good speech. It was meant to be comforting. But to Izuku, it sounded like a concession speech. I don't want to run the world, Izuku thought, his fist clenching under the desk. I want to save it. Let's begin with introductions, Ishiyama sighed, checking his watch. Name, quirk, and intended career path. Let's start from the front. The introductions were a parade of mediocrity, or at least, that's how the students viewed themselves. I'm Tsuchikawa. Quirk, dust cloud. I guess, civil engineering? I'm Ojiro. Wait, no, he's in hero course. I'm Sato, no, wrong list. Sorry, I'm nervous. I'm Kenta. Quirk, elastic fingers. I want to be a surgeon. When it was Shinso's turn, he didn't even stand up. He just raised a hand. Hitoshi Shinso. Quirk, brainwashing. Career path, whatever pays the rent, the class muttered. Brainwashing? Scary. Sounds like a villain quirk. Shinso's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. Then it was Izuku's turn. He stood up. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. Every eye turned to him. He felt the weight of the transfer protocol hanging over him. He wasn't just a student. He was a student on probation. I'm Izuku Midoriya, he said, his voice trembling slightly before finding its footing. Quirk. Superpower. He used the generic name All Might had suggested. And my career path. Izuku paused. He looked at Mr. Ishiyama. He looked at the beige walls. My career path is heroics. I intend to transfer to Class 1A. Silence. Absolute, dead silence. Then, a snicker from the back. Good luck with that, buddy, a boy with a lizard-like face whispered. Nobody transfers. It's a myth to keep us from dropping out. I will, Izuku said, sitting down. His face burned, but he didn't retract the statement. Shinso glanced at him. Bold, he whispered. Delusional, but bold. The morning classes were grueling, not because of the difficulty, but because of the normalcy. Math. English with President Mike, who was the only splash of color in the day, screaming grammatical rules at them. History. It was just school. By the time the lunch bell rang, Izuku felt like his soul was being slowly siphoned out through his ears. He packed his bag and looked at Shinso. Lunch? Izuku offered. Shinso shrugged. Sure. Let's go watch the zoo animals feed. They headed to the main cafeteria, Lunch Rush's Cook Hero establishment. This was the one place where all departments mingled. It was a massive, glass-walled dome filled with the smells of gourmet food sold at student prices. The social hierarchy was immediately apparent. The hero course students sat in the center tables, loud and boisterous. The support course students sat near the windows, tinkering with gadgets. The business course students sat in huddled groups, likely trading stocks. And general ed? They sat on the fringes. The nosebleed seats. Izuku and Shinso grabbed their trays, katsudon for Izuku, black coffee and plain rice for Shinso, and found a table in the corner. From here, Izuku had a direct line of sight to them. Class 1A. He saw Ada chopping the air with his hand, lecturing a boy with spiky red hair. He saw a girl with pink skin laughing loudly. He saw Todoroki, the boy with the dual-colored hair, eating cold soba in isolation, and he saw Uraraka. She was sitting with Ida and the frog girl, Ajuri. She was smiling, holding a rice ball. She looked happy. She looked like she belonged. You're staring, Shinso said, taking a sip of his coffee. I'm observing, Izuku corrected, opening his notebook. Information is ammunition. You look like a stalker, Shinso countered. Which one is it? The gravity girl? Izuku flinched. She's a friend. Kind of. We met at the entrance exam. I saved her. Well, I tried to. She actually saved me from falling to my death. So that's the famous incident, Shinso mused. The zero-pointer. Rumor has it you exploded. I broke my arms and legs, Izuku corrected quietly. The recoil was higher than expected, and that's why you're here, Shinso gestured with his chopsticks. Because you're a glass cannon, basically. The teachers think I'm a liability. Must be nice, Shinso muttered darkly. Izuku blinked. Nice? To be broken? To have a quirk that actually does something, Shinso said, his eyes drilling into the table. You have too much power. I have the wrong kind. My quirk doesn't work on robots. The entrance exam is a DPS race. If you can't punch, blast, or crush metal, you get 0 points. It doesn't matter if you can control minds. If the enemy is a machine, you're quirkless. Izuku stopped eating. He looked at Shinso, really looked at him, and saw the resentment simmering there. It was a familiar look. It was the look Izuku had worn for 10 years while watching Bakugo produce explosions from his palms. That's irrational, Izuku said, his voice gaining that mutterstorm speed. UA is supposed to be the pinnacle of hero education. But heroics isn't just combat. It's rescue, information gathering, de-escalation. A quirk like brainwashing? That's top tier for hostage situations. You could end a villain standoff instantly without property damage. The fact that the exam didn't account for that is a systemic failure. Shinso stared at him. Are you analyzing me? I'm agreeing with you. Izuku insisted. You were cheated. The system filtered you out because it's lazy. It favors flashy quirks over subtle ones. Shinso leaned back, a strange expression on his face. You're the first person to call my quirk useful without adding for a villain to the end of the sentence. Villain? Izuku frowned. Why? Because it takes away free will, Shinso said flatly. People don't trust what they can't see. They think I'm going to make them rob a bank or something. A quirk is a tool, Izuku said firmly. It's how you use it. I have a quirk that can level a building, but if I use it wrong, I'm just a guy who breaks his own bones. You have a quirk that can stop a fight, but if you don't use it, you're just a guy in Gen Ed. Shinso swirled his coffee. Midoriya, has anyone ever told you that you're intensely intense? Frequently, Izuku admitted. Suddenly, a shadow fell over their table. Well. If it isn't the reject squad. Izuku stiffened. He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The smell of nitroglycerin was a dead giveaway. Katsuki Bakugo stood there, tray in hand, flanked by Kirishima and Kaminari, who looked confused by the confrontation. Kaken, Izuku said, trying to keep his voice steady, enjoying the view from the cheap seats. Bakugo sneered. He kicked the leg of Izuku's chair. Don't think I didn't see you staring at us. It's pathetic. You're like a dog watching through a window. Hey man, chill out, Kirishima said, putting a hand on Bakugo's shoulder. Let him eat. Shut up, shitty hair, Bakugo snapped. He glared at Izuku. I heard a rumor, Deku. Some people are saying you have a quirk now. But I know the truth. You just brought some support item to the exam and it blew up in your face, right? That's why you're in Gen Ed. Because you're a fraud. The cafeteria had gone quiet near them. People were listening. I have a quirk, Izuku said, standing up. He was shaking, but he stood. And I'm going to master it. And then I'm going to transfer. Bakugo laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. Transfer? You couldn't even walk out of the exam on your own legs. Stay in the kiddie pool, Deku. If you try to swim with the sharks, you'll just drown. Bakugo turned and walked away, his cape of arrogance billowing behind him. Izuku sank back into his chair. His appetite was gone. Shinso watched Bakugo leave, then looked back at Izuku. Friendly childhood friend. Something like that, Izuku murmured. He's terrified of you, Shinso said. Izuku looked up, startled. What? No. Kaken isn't scared of anything. He hates me. He hates you, Shinso agreed. But he went out of his way to come over here and stomp on you. You don't stomp on an ant unless you're afraid it's going to bite you. He knows something about you that scares him. Shinso took a bite of his rice. Maybe you're not as hopeless as you think, Midoriya. The school day ended at 3:30 p.m. For general ed students, this meant club activities or going home. For Izuku, it meant the second shift. He waited until the hallways cleared, then slipped out the back exit near the gymnasium. He pulled his hood up, sprinting across the campus grounds to a secluded, older gym building known as Gym Gamma Annex. It was rarely used, mostly for storage. He slid the rusty door open. Inside, standing amidst piles of wrestling mats and old jumping horses, was a skeleton in a yellow suit. I am here. All Might coughed, blood trickling from his lip. Discreetly, All Might. Izuku dropped his bag and ran over. I'm sorry if I'm late. Ishiyama-sensei kept us for a lecture on the importance of filing taxes. A vital skill. All Might gave a thumbs up. But not one that will help you handle one for all. The hero form poofed away, leaving the emaciated Tashinori Yagi. He looked tired. The shadows under his eyes rivaled Shinso's. How was the first day? All Might asked, sitting on a stack of mats. It was hard, Izuku admitted, taking off his blazer and loosening his tie. Everyone looks at us like we failed. And watching Class 1, it felt like they were miles away. Distance is a state of mind, All Might said, though he sounded like he was quoting a fortune cookie. But physically, yes, you are behind. They are doing combat training right now. You are doing taxes. That means we have to work twice as efficiently. I'm ready, Izuku said, rolling up his sleeves. The compression brace on his right arm was a constant reminder of his limits. What's the plan? Do I try to summon 5%? 1%? No, All Might said sharply. No summoning. Not yet, Izuku slumped. But the transfer protocol requires you not to break your bones. All Might interrupted. Young Midoriya, listen. I spoke to Recovery Girl. She said your bones are like, how did she put it? Breadsticks wrapped in wet tissue paper. If you use the quirk again before your body adapts, you're finished. All Might stood up and walked over to a rack of weights. We are going back to basics. But harder. You built the vessel on the beach. Now we must reinforce the vessel. He tossed Izuku a heavy medicine ball. Izuku caught it, grunting under the weight. Core strength, All Might commanded. One for all radiates from the center. If your core is weak, the energy lashes out to the extremities and blows them off. You need to be a fortress, not a cannon. For the next 2 hours, Izuku didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a construction worker. Planks, squats, deadlifts, medicine ball throws. It was grueling, repetitive, unglamorous work. There were no smashes. No lightning. Just sweat. Visualize the egg. All Might shouted as Izuku held a plank position, his body trembling violently. The egg exploded. Izuku yelled back, sweat dripping onto the mat. The microwave is a bad metaphor. Then find a new one. All Might paced around him. The power isn't a thing you hold. It's a river. It's a fire. It's something fluid. Don't uncork the bottle. Widen the neck. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. Fluid. Not a switch. A dial. He tried to picture it. The power was a hum inside him, a golden light curled in his chest. He tried to let a tiny bit out, just enough to coat his skin. Zap! A spark of green lightning flickered across his shoulder. Arg! Izuku collapsed, clutching his shoulder. A sharp, stinging pain, like a pulled muscle. Stop! All Might rushed over. You let too much out. That was at least 15%. It feels like 0% or 100%, Izuku gasped, clutching his arm. I can't find the middle. All Might looked at him with profound sadness. I know. I wish I could explain it better. For me, it was like breathing. I just did it. You're a natural genius, Izuku grumbled, sitting up. I'm a natural hard worker. There's a difference. There is, All Might agreed. He handed Izuku a water bottle. And that's why you'll be a better hero than me someday. Because you'll understand the struggle. Izuku drank the water, staring at his shaking hands. All Might, he said quietly. Do you think Aizawa was right? Should I just stay in Gen Ed? Maybe I'm just not built for this. All Might sat down next to him. The gym was quiet, dust motes dancing in the shaft of light from the high window. Aizawa is a rational man, All Might said. He sees the world in probabilities. The probability of you succeeding without injury is low. He's trying to save your life. All Might turned to Izuku, his blue eyes burning with intensity. But heroes don't operate on probability. We operate on possibility. Is it possible for you to master this? Yes. Is it likely? Only if you refuse to accept the alternative. He placed a large, bony hand on Izuku's head. You are in Class 1C. Use it. Use the anger. Use the jealousy. Let it be the fuel. You are the underdog, Izuku Midoriya. And the world loves an underdog. Friday. End of the first week. The week blurred into a routine. Morning classes. Lunch with Shinso. Staring at 1A, studying. Secret training. Sleep. Repeat. By Friday afternoon, Izuku felt a strange sort of equilibrium. He hated Gen Ed, but he was starting to understand the rhythm of it. He was packing his bag when Shinso tapped his desk. Hey, Shinso said. Library? Can't, Izuku lied automatically. Remedial P. Shinso raised an eyebrow. You have a lot of remedial P for a guy in the literature track. You sure you're not fighting in an underground fight club? I wish, Izuku laughed nervously. Just physical therapy. For the arm. Right, Shinso didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. Well, have fun. I'm going to go read up on quirk ethics and try not to fall asleep. Izuku walked out of the classroom. He paused in the hallway. Down the corridor, near the hero wing, he saw Class 1A leaving. They looked exhausted but exhilarated. They were chatting about rescue training scheduled for the next week. I heard we're going to the USJ. Uraraka was saying, pumping her fist. 13 is going to be there. Rescue training is vital, Ida chopped the air. It is the foundation of modern heroics. Izuku watched them go. He felt a pang of longing so sharp it almost doubled him over. The USJ. The unforeseen simulation joint. It was legendary. He had dreamed of training there since he was 5. They get the USJ, Izuku thought. I get Gym Gamma Annex. He turned away, heading for the exit. As he walked, he passed the trophy case in the main hall. It was filled with medals from past sports festivals. The sports festival, Izuku thought. That's in 3 weeks. That was the clause. That was the loophole. If he could dominate the sports festival, if he could stand on that podium without breaking his body, Aizawa couldn't ignore him. Nisa couldn't ignore him. He pushed the door open, stepping out into the late afternoon sun. He wasn't part of Class 1A. Not yet. He was Class 1C. The C stood for civilian. Or casualty. Or can't. No, Izuku thought, breaking into a run toward his secret gym. 1C stands for challenger. He sprinted across the campus, the wind whipping his hair. He didn't know that in less than a week, the peace of UA would be shattered. He didn't know that the students he envied would soon be fighting for their lives. He just knew he had to be ready. He reached the gym, threw the door open, and shouted into the gloom. All might! Let's go! 100 squats. Deep in the shadows, the symbol of peace smiled. That's the spirit, my boy. Plus ultra. The rain began shortly after second period. It wasn't a dramatic storm, just a gray, persistent drizzle that turned the world outside the classroom windows into a blurred watercolor painting. In classroom 1C, the atmosphere was thick with the soporific drone of Mr. Ishiyama's voice. He was dissecting the socio-economic impact of the quirk boom on pre-21st century infrastructure. It was important material for a future civil servant or analyst. It was, however, torture for a boy whose veins hummed with the dormant power of a god. Izuku Midoriya sat in seat 18, his chin resting in his palm, his eyes glazed over. His notebook lay open, but he hadn't written a word in 20 minutes. His gaze was fixed on the window, piercing through the rain, focused on a distant point near the main campus gate. He had seen them leave. 20 minutes ago, a bus painted with the UA logo had rolled away from the Hero course wing. He knew the schedule. He had found, the curriculum outline on a public server. Today was rescue training for Class 1A. They were heading to the unforeseen simulation joint. The legendary USJ-13 would be there. All Might would be there. They're going to learn how to save lives in disaster zones, Izuku thought, a bitter lump forming in his throat. I'm learning how the Tokyo subway system was rezoned in 2150. Beside him, Hitoshi Shinso was asleep. Or at least, he was performing a very convincing impression of it. His eyes were open, but they were devoid of life, staring blankly at a spot on the blackboard. He was spinning a pen between his fingers with mechanical precision. Mr. Midoriya, Mr. Ishiyama's voice cut through the fog. Izuku jolted. Why, yes, sir. Since you are so intently studying the window, perhaps you can tell me the primary reason for the collapse of the insurance industry during the dawn of quirks? Izuku blinked. His brain, usually running on overdrive, engaged instantly. Ah, yes. The inability of actuarial tables to account for acts of quirk led to mass insolvency. Insurance companies couldn't distinguish between natural disasters and villain attacks, leading to the super risk classification which eventually required government subsidization. The class stared at him. Mr. Ishiyama adjusted his glasses, looking disappointed that he hadn't caught the daydreamer off guard. Correct, the teacher sighed. Please pay attention to the lecture, not the rain. Izuku shrank into his seat. Yes, sir. Shinso nudged him with his elbow, not looking away from the board. Show off, he whispered. I just read the chapter, Izuku whispered back. You memorized the chapter, Shinso corrected. There's a difference. The clock ticked. 12:45 p.m. Izuku looked at the clock. They should be arriving at the USJ now. Introduction by 13. All Might probably making a flashy entrance. He gripped his pen tight enough to make the plastic creak. I should be there. The thought was intrusive, a constant drumbeat in his skull. Every day in Gen Ed felt like wading through molasses. He was safe here. That was what Recovery Girl said. That was what Nizu wanted. Safety. But safety felt an awful lot like suffocation. Then, the world changed. It didn't start with an explosion. It started with a sound that bypassed the ears and vibrated directly in the teeth. Ryo-obi. Ryo-obi. The siren was deafening. It wasn't the standard fire alarm, which was a sharp, repetitive buzz. This was a wail. A low, guttural, rising scream that signaled catastrophic danger. Mr. Ishiyama dropped his chalk. It shattered on the floor, the sound lost in the cacophony. Security Level 3 breach. Security Level 3 breach. The automated voice was female, calm, and terrifyingly loud. All students are to evacuate to designated shelters immediately. This is not a drill. For a second, nobody moved. The concept of a Level 3 breach at UA High School was an oxymoron. It was like saying the sun had breached the horizon at midnight. UA was the safest place in Japan. The UA barrier was impenetrable. Level 3? A girl in the front row squeaked, her face draining of color. That means, someone is inside. Everyone up! Mr. Ishiyama shouted, his monotone voice finally cracking into urgency. Leave your books. Leave your bags. Single file. We are moving to the main cafeteria shelter. Now, the spell broke. Panic, sharp and electric, surged through the room. Chairs scraped violently against the floor. Students scrambled for the door. Don't push! Ishiyama yelled, trying to herd them. Keep moving! Midoriya, Shinso, help the rear! Izuku stood up, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He grabbed Shinso's arm as the purple-haired boy seemed to sway, disoriented by the noise. Shinso, move! I'm moving, Shinso muttered, shaking his head. That siren is loud. They spilled out into the hallway. It was chaos. The general education wing was flooding with students. Classes 1D and 1E were merging into the stream. From the stairwells, the business and support course students were descending like a panicked waterfall. What's going on? Is it a villain? Did the press break in again? Izuku's mind latched onto that last comment. The press. Yesterday, the media had swarmed the gates. It had been annoying, a security nuisance that triggered a level 1 alarm. But today? A level 3? The press intrusion. Izuku's mind began to race, connecting dots that hadn't even been drawn yet. They triggered the barrier yesterday. They saw how the system reacted. They saw how long it took the pros to arrive. Was that a test? A probe? He was shoved forward by a senior from the business course. Move it, freshman. Midoriya, stay close, Shinso shouted over the siren. They navigated the crushing tide of bodies. The anxiety in the air was palpable, a physical weight. But amidst the fear, Izuku felt a cold chill of logic. If someone had broken into UA, they had bypassed the strongest security system in the country. That required planning. It required resources, and if they had planned this, why now? The schedule, Izuku realized, his blood running cold. The class schedule was in the staff room. If the press stole it, they know where All Might is. The USJ, Izuku whispered. What? Shinso asked, buffeted by the crowd. Nothing, Izuku lied, grabbing Shinso's sleeve tighter. Just keep moving. They reached the massive double doors of the lunch rush cafeteria. It was a reinforced structure, designed to double as a bunker. Thousands of students were pouring in. As soon as Class 1C crossed the threshold, heavy blast shutters began to descend over the windows. The natural light was cut off, replaced by the harsh hum of emergency LEDs. Get to the designated zone. A teacher, power loader, shouted from atop a table, waving his excavator claws. Sit down. Stay calm. Izuku and Shinso found a spot at a table near the back wall. They collapsed onto the bench, breathing hard. Then, with a final, resounding thud, the main blast doors slammed shut. The locking mechanisms engaged with a heavy clank clank clank. The siren cut off. The sudden silence was almost worse than the noise. It was filled instantly by the murmuring of 1,000 terrified teenagers. We're trapped, someone whispered nearby. We're safe, someone else corrected, though they didn't sound convinced. Izuku put his hands on the table to stop them from shaking. He looked around. He saw the faces of the general ed students. He saw the support kids clutching their gadgets. He saw the business kids checking their phones. No signal, a girl with glasses announced, staring at her screen. The jammers are active. Of course they are, Shinso muttered, leaning his head back against the wall. Standard protocol. Lock us in, black us out. He looked at Izuku. You're doing the thing again. Izuku blinked. What? The muttering. Your mouth is moving but no sound is coming out. It's creepy. Izuku clamped his mouth shut. I'm thinking. About what? How we're going to die. No, Izuku lowered his voice, leaning across the table. About who isn't here. Shinso frowned. He sat up, scanning the room. His eyes darted from table to table. He saw the kaleidoscope of uniforms, the different department insignias. 1B is over there, Shinso pointed. Support is there. Business is there. Second years. Third years. Shinso froze. He looked back at Izuku. Where is 1A? They aren't on campus, Izuku whispered, the dread coiling in his stomach like a serpent. They took a bus. To the USJ. It's an isolated facility about 3 kilometers away. Okay, Shinso reasoned slowly. So they're away from the breach. They're safe. Are they? Izuku asked. He pulled his notebook out of his bag, flipping to a page where he had analyzed UA's security responses. Think about it, Shinso. If you wanted to attack UA, would you attack the main fortress filled with hundreds of students and dozens of pro-heroes? Or would you create a diversion here to draw the heroes away from a softer target? Shinso's eyes widened. You think the breach here is a fake-out? I think the alarm went off here. Izuku tapped the table. But I think the real fight is at the USJ. But All Might is there, Shinso argued. And 13. They'll be fine. Izuku looked down at his scarred hand. All Might is there. That was the problem. Only Izuku knew the truth. All Might had a limit. 3 hours a day. And he had spent the entire morning resolving incidents on his commute. Izuku had seen the news reports on his phone before class. A fire in Taido. A car chase in Shibuya. A collapsing bridge. All Might had been active since 8 a.m. It was now 1 p.m. He's tapped out, Izuku thought, terror gripping him. He's running on fumes. If villains attack the USJ expecting the Prime All Might, and they get the weakened version. Midoriya? Shinso's voice was concerned now. You look like you're about to throw up. I need to leave, Izuku said, standing up. Sit down. Shinso hissed, grabbing his wrist and yanking him back. Are you insane? We're in a lockdown. The doors are sealed. The teachers are patrolling. Where are you going to go? I have to tell someone, Izuku pleaded. I have to tell them that All Might be in danger. Tell who? Power Loader? He's managing 1,000 panic attacks right now. And what are you going to say? Hey, I have a hunch based on zero evidence that the strongest man alive is in trouble? Izuku slumped back onto the bench. Shinso was right. It sounded insane. Besides, Shinso added, his voice softer. If the villains are at the USJ, what could you do? You can't use your quirk without exploding. You'd just be another liability. The word hung in the air between them. Liability. It was the label the school had given him. It was the reason he was wearing this uniform. It was the reason he was sitting in a cafeteria while his friends were potentially being slaughtered. I hate this, Izuku whispered, tears pricking his eyes. I hate being safe. Welcome to the club, Shinso murmured, looking at his own hands. We're the civilians, Midoriya. The NPCs. We wait for the heroes to save the day. Time stretched. It became a physical thing, agonizing and slow. 10 minutes passed. 20. An hour. The rumors began to circulate through the cafeteria like a virus. I heard a third year say they saw smoke rising from the mountains. Someone said the sensors detected a warp quirk. I heard All Might isn't even on campus today. Every whisper was a needle in Izuku's heart. He sat with his head in his hands, rocking slightly. He was simulating the battle in his mind. If Eraserhead is there, he can erase quirks. But he's a specialist in one-on-one combat. If they sent a horde, he'll be overwhelmed. 13 is a rescue hero, weak in close quarters. If they have a way to separate the students. He pictured Uraraka floating helplessly. He pictured Ida trying to run but being cornered. He pictured Tsuyu. Stop it, he commanded himself. Have faith. They are UA students. They are strong, but are they ready for murder? The clock ticked. 2:30 p.m. Suddenly, the PA system crackled. The static sound cut through the murmurs of the room. Attention students. It was Principal Niza's voice. It wasn't the pre-recorded alarm. It was live. And Nizu, usually chirpy and chaotic, sounded flat. The security threat has been neutralized. The lockdown is lifted. Please return to your homerooms to collect your belongings. School is dismissed for the remainder of the day. A collective sigh of relief washed over the cafeteria. People began to cheer. Some cried. See? Shinso exhaled, his shoulders slumping. Neutralized. It's over. However, Niza's voice continued, silencing the room instantly. Due to an ongoing police investigation regarding the incident at the USJ facility, all after-school club activities are cancelled. Students are strictly prohibited from loitering on campus. Please proceed directly home. The cheer died. Incident at the USJ? Wait, so something did happen? Was it a drill gone wrong? Izuku didn't wait. He grabbed his bag and bolted. Midoriya! Shinso shouted. Izuku didn't stop. He pushed through the crowd of students who were slowly getting up. He shoved past a group of business students. He ignored Power Loader's shout to walk, don't run. He burst out of the cafeteria into the hallway. The blast shutters were retracting, letting the gray afternoon light back in. He didn't go to Class 1C. He didn't go to the exit. He turned right, sprinting toward the faculty wing and the infirmary. Neutralized, Niza had said. He didn't say everyone is fine. He said neutralized. Izuku's lungs burned. His legs pumped. He reached the corridor leading to Recovery Girl's office. It was blocked. Cementos was standing there, creating a wall of gray stone to block the view further down the hall. Police officers were swarming the area. Paramedics were rushing past with stretchers. Izuku skidded to a halt, hiding behind a vending machine. He peeked around the corner. A stretcher was being wheeled out of the elevator that connected to the underground transport tunnels. On it lay a figure wrapped entirely in bandages. Not just a cast, a mummy. The only thing visible was a tuft of black hair. Stabilize his eyes. A paramedic shouted. The orbital floor is shattered, Aizawa. Izuku clamped a hand over his mouth to stifle a gasp. That was his teacher. The man who had looked at him with such cold, logical disdain. The man who was supposedly invincible in the underground. He looked like he had been put through a meat grinder. Another stretcher followed. 13. The space hero's suit was torn open, the back completely shredded. Midoriya? Izuku jumped, spinning around. Recovery Girl was standing there. She looked older than usual. Her face was drawn, her eyes sad. She held a clipboard that was shaking slightly in her hand. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice lacking its usual bite. Students are supposed to be going home. I had to know, Izuku whispered. Class 1A. Are they? Recovery Girl sighed. She looked down the hall where the paramedics were loading Aizawa into an ambulance. They are alive, she said. Physically, most are fine. A few scrapes. Midoriya-kun, it was a massacre of intent, if not result. And All Might? Izuku asked, his voice barely audible. Recovery Girl's expression darkened. She gestured for him to follow her. Not to the main infirmary, but to a small side office she used for private consultations. She opened the door. Izuku stepped in. All Might was sitting on a low stool. He was in his true form, skinny, angular, skeletal. He wasn't wearing his yellow suit. He was shirtless, bandages wrapped thickly around his torso. Steam was rising from his skin. All Might! Izuku cried. The hero looked up. His eyes were haunted. He tried to smile, but it was a grimace. Blood stained his teeth. Young Midoriya, All Might rasped. You shouldn't be here. I knew, Izuku blurted out, tears streaming down his face. I knew you were out of time. I sat in the cafeteria and I knew you were pushing past your limit, and I couldn't do anything. All Might slumped. I was late. Because I was careless. Because I spent my time on petty crimes. I wasn't there when the League of Villains arrived. League of Villains? They came to kill me, All Might said. They brought a creature, a Nomu. It was bioengineered to destroy me. It had shock absorption. Regeneration. It was as strong as I was. Izuku stared at All Might's bandages. You fought that? I defeated it, All Might said, looking at his trembling hands. I went beyond 100%. I punched it into the stratosphere. But... Aizawa. 13. The children. All Might looked up, meeting Izuku's eyes. They fought, Izuku. Your classmates. They fought villains with killing intent. Ajiri, Mineta, young Bakugo, Todoroki, they stood their ground. But seeing them, seeing the fear in their eyes, All Might choked up. I failed to be the shield. They had to become the sword. Izuku felt a wave of nausea. His classmates, kids his age, had been forced to fight for their lives. While he sat in a cafeteria eating a granola bar. Get him out of here, Chio, All Might whispered. I need to rest. Recovery Girl gently pushed Izuku toward the door. Go home, Sonny. There's nothing you can do here. Izuku stumbled out into the hallway. The police were cordoning off the area. He walked like a ghost toward the main entrance. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sun was trying to peek through the clouds, casting a sickly yellow light over the campus. Near the main gates, a group of students was huddled together. It was them. Uraraka. Ida. Tsuyu. Mineta. They were still in their PE uniforms, or parts of their costumes. They were covered in dust and soot. Uraraka had a bandage on her cheek. Ida was limping. They weren't talking. They were just standing there, waiting for their parents or guardians. Izuku froze. He wanted to run to them. He wanted to hug them and ask if they were okay, but he stopped. Something about the way they stood created a wall. An invisible barrier. They were survivors of a trauma he hadn't shared. They shared a silent language of glances and flinches. Uraraka looked up. She saw him. Deku-kun, her voice cracked. She didn't run to him. She just waved, a small, weak motion. Izuku walked over, his legs feeling heavy. Uraraka-san. Ida-kun. I heard. It was scary, Tsuyu croaked, staring at the ground. The villains, they weren't like the ones on TV. They wanted to kill us. Kero. They broke Sensei, Mineta whimpered, clutching his head. They snapped his arms like twigs. There was so much blood. Ida adjusted his glasses. His hand was shaking uncontrollably. We were unprepared. We thought we were heroes in training. We were just children. Izuku looked at them. He saw the shift. The innocence was gone, burned away by the reality of malice. I'm glad you weren't there, Deku-kun, Uraraka said softly. Izuku felt like he had been slapped. What? Uraraka looked at him, her eyes filled with a terrifyingly genuine relief. It was so dangerous. Aizawa-sensei couldn't protect us all. If you had been there, you know, with your arms. She gestured vaguely to his arm, which was still in a compression sleeve. You would have tried to save us, she said. And you would have gotten hurt. Or worse. So, I'm glad you were safe in the cafeteria. Safe. There was that word again. To Uraraka, it was a comfort. To Izuku, it was an insult. It was a confirmation of his greatest fear. To them, I am not a peer. I am a liability. I am something to be protected. Yeah, Izuku managed to choke out. I'm glad you're safe too. He couldn't stay. He couldn't stand there and be the safe one. I have to go, Izuku said. My mom will be worried. See you tomorrow, Deku, Uraraka said. Izuku turned and walked away. He walked fast. Then he jogged. Then he ran. He ran all the way to the train station. He ran past the commuters, past the shops, past the peace and quiet of a city that didn't know how close it had come to losing its symbol. He reached his neighborhood, but he didn't go home. He went to the small park near his apartment complex, the one with the swing set where Bakugo used to pick on him. He sat on the swing, the chains creaking under his weight. He pulled out his phone. He stared at the black screen. Aizawa was broken because he was protecting students. Because the students weren't strong enough to protect themselves. And I wasn't even there to help carry the load. He thought about Gen Ed. He thought about the transfer protocol. Transfer when you're ready. Transfer when it's safe. Bullshit, Izuku hissed. The villains weren't waiting. The League wasn't waiting for him to learn how to not break his bones. They were here now. They were hunting All Might now. If he waited for the safe path, there wouldn't be a hero society left to join. He needed a shortcut. He needed to stop being a glass cannon and start being a weapon. He opened his contacts. He scrolled past Mom. He scrolled past All Might. He stopped on a number that All Might had given him a week ago, with a warning, only call him if you're desperate. He's a demon. The contact name was simply Gran Torino. Izuku hit dial. The phone rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Hello? The voice was old, scratchy, and sounded like the person had just woken up from a nap. Is this Sorahiko Torino? Izuku asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Who's asking? This is Izuku Midoriya. All Might's student. There was a pause. Then, a distinct snort. Ah. The vessel. Tashinori mentioned you. Said you were a smart kid. In General Ed, right? Yes, Izuku said. I'm in General Ed. So why are you calling me? I'm retired. I don't do autographs. I don't want an autograph, Izuku said, gripping the chain of the swing. I want to learn. Learn what? How to bake cookies? How to use one for all without dying, Izuku said flatly. The line went silent. All Might is a great hero, Izuku continued, the words tumbling out. But he's a natural genius. He doesn't know how to teach someone who starts from zero. He tells me to visualize an egg in a microwave. He tells me to clench my butt. It's not working. Hey, Gran Torino chuckled. Yeah, Toshi always was a meathead. So, you think you can handle my teaching? I trained him, you know. He still pisses himself when he hears my name. I don't care, Izuku said. I saw my teacher today. He was mummified because he had to fight alone. I saw my friends. They were traumatized. I was safe. I hate being safe. Izuku stood up from the swing. I have a week before the sports festival. The school says I'm not allowed to use my quirk. They say I'm a liability. I want to prove them wrong. I need to be ready now. Gran Torino was silent for a long moment. Then, he let out a wheezing cackle that sounded like dry leaves scraping together. Liability, huh? Good word. Means you're dangerous. Just gotta point the danger in the right direction. Take the bullet train to Kofu Station. Be there Saturday morning at 0800 hours. If you're 1 minute late, I leave you there. I'll be there, Izuku said. And kid? Yes? Bring a vomit bag. You're gonna need it. Click. Izuku lowered the phone. The sun had set. The streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows across the park. Izuku looked at his hand. The scars were faint in the orange light. He wasn't going back to Class 1C on Monday with the same mindset. He was done watching through the window. He was going to kick the door down. The bullet train to Kofu was fast, quiet, and excessively comfortable, a stark contrast to the turmoil churning inside Izuku Midoriya's stomach. He sat by the window, watching the urban sprawl of Tokyo dissolve into the green, rolling hills of Yamanashi Prefecture. His yellow backpack sat on his lap, heavier than usual. Inside, tucked between his notebooks and a spare change of clothes, was a permission slip signed by Inko Midoriya. Reason for absence: intensive career guidance seminar/rehabilitation. It wasn't a lie exactly. It just omitted the part where the guidance counselor was a retired hero known for training All Might by beating him into unconsciousness. Izuku checked his phone. It was 7:55 a.m. The train was pulling into Kofu Station. 5 minutes early, Izuku thought, heart pounding. Gran Torino said if I was late, he'd leave me. The doors hissed open. Izuku bolted. He navigated the station with the frantic energy of a rabbit being hunted, dodging commuters and tourists until he burst out of the south exit. He scanned the plaza. There was a statue of Takeda Shingen. There were taxis. There were coffee shops, but no old man. Down here, kid? Izuku froze. He looked down. Standing near a vending machine, wearing a yellow cape and a white domino mask that looked like it hadn't been washed since the Showa era, was a tiny, elderly man. He was barely waist-high to Izuku. He was munching on a taiyaki. Gran Torino? Izuku asked, skeptical. This was the demon trainer. You're early, the old man grunted, licking bean paste off his thumb. Good. Toshi was always late. Too busy posing for fans. I'm Izuku Midoriya. Izuku bowed deeply. Thank you for agreeing to train me. Don't thank me yet, Gran Torino cackled. It was a dry, wheezing sound. You might want to sue me by Tuesday. He turned and began to shuffle away with surprising speed. Come on. My place is a few blocks away. It's a dump, but the rent is cheap. They walked through the quiet streets of Kofu. It was a sleepy city compared to Muzidafu. The air was cleaner, smelling of mountains and rain. Gran Torino's place was a dilapidated 2-story building that looked like it had been a candy shop 40 years ago. The sign was faded, reading only sweets. With the rest peeled off, Gran Torino unlocked the door and ushered Izuku inside. The interior was cluttered with boxes, old newspapers, and the distinct smell of microwave meals. Put your bag down, Gran Torino ordered, locking the door behind them. Suit up. Suit up? Izuku blinked. Now, did I stutter? Put on your pea uniform. We don't have time for tea. Izuku scrambled to comply. He changed in the cramped bathroom, emerging in his blue UA gym clothes. He kept his compression sleeve on his right arm. Okay, Gran Torino said. He was standing in the center of the room, tapping his cane, which looked suspiciously like a modified taser, on the floor. Show me what you can do. Here? Izuku looked around at the clutter. But I'll break everything. That's the point, Gran Torino said. Toshi told me your problem. You treat your quirk like a cannon. You think you need a battlefield to use it. But villains don't wait for battlefields. They attack you in alleys, in bathrooms, in your own living room. He pointed the cane at Izuku. Attack me? What? Hit me. Use the quirk. One smash. Go. Izuku hesitated. But if I use 100%, I'll destroy the building. And my arm. Who said use 100%? Gran Torino's eyes narrowed. Just hit me. Izuku gritted his teeth. Okay. He's a pro. He can take it. He focused. He felt the ember of one for all in his chest. He grabbed it, trying to pull out just a sliver. Smash! He swung his fist. But as always, the power flooded the gate. The air pressure alone sent papers flying, but Gran Torino wasn't there. Zip! The old man was a blur. He bounced off the wall, then the ceiling, then the floor behind Izuku. Before Izuku could even retract his punch, a cane smacked the back of his knees. Gah! Izuku collapsed. Too slow! Gran Torino shouted from atop the refrigerator. And too loud! You scream smash like you're announcing your move in a video game. You think a villain is going to wait for the sound effect? I can't control the output. Izuku yelled, rubbing his legs. It's all or nothing. That's because you're stiff. Gran Torino hopped down. You're clenching. You think power comes from tension. Wrong. Power comes from flow. He walked over to a microwave sitting on a stack of magazines. He opened it and pulled out a plate of cold taiyaki. Toshi told me about his teaching metaphors, Gran Torino muttered, looking disgusted. The egg in the microwave. But clenching. The man is an idiot savant. He shoved the plate into the microwave. Midoriya. Look at the taiyaki. Izuku looked. It's a fish-shaped cake. If I put this in for 5 minutes on high, what happens? It explodes. Or burns. Right. That's you? You're turning the dial to high every time. But this microwave, he tapped the machine, has a defrost setting. It has a reheat setting. It spins the plate so the heat is distributed evenly. Gran Torino turned to Izuku. One for all isn't a bullet you fire. It's a suit you wear. Izuku froze. A suit? Right now you're gathering all the energy into one point, your fist, your finger, and releasing it. The pressure is too high for that one point to handle. So boom. Broken bones. Gran Torino began to bounce around the room again, using his quirk jet to ricochet off surfaces. He was fast, fluid, unpredictable. Look at me! He yelled as he zipped past. My quirk shoots air from my feet. But I don't just shoot it. I circulate the momentum. I use my whole body to absorb the shock. He landed in front of Izuku, not even out of breath. Don't focus the power. Spread it. Let it flow through your whole body. Every vein. Every muscle. Just a little bit. 5%. Everywhere. All the time. Izuku stared at him. The concept hit him like a physical blow. Everywhere. All the time. He had been treating one for all like a special attack. A finishing move. But All Might was always strong. He didn't activate his strength. He was strong. Full body? Izuku whispered. Full calling. Gran Torino nodded. Try it. Close your eyes. Don't clench your fist. Just stand there. And turn the microwave on. Low heat. Let the heat fill the whole box. Izuku closed his eyes. He breathed. In. Out. He found the light in his chest. Usually, he would grab it and shove it into his arm. This time, he imagined the light turning into liquid. Let it flow. He pushed the energy down his legs. Up his spine. Into his shoulders. Into his fingertips. He felt a buzz. An electric hum under his skin. It wasn't painful. It felt energizing. He opened his eyes. Green lightning crackled around his body. Not in a burst, but in a steady, rhythmic pulse. His hair floated slightly. I'm doing it, Izuku gasped. He looked at his hands. The red veins of power were there, but they weren't glowing angrily. They were dim. Controlled. Good, Gran Torino grinned. That's about 5%. Maybe less. But it's stable. He raised his cane. Now. Try to hit me again. Izuku moved. He didn't need to wind up. The power was already there. He pushed off the floor. The floorboards creaked, but didn't shatter. He crossed the room in a blink. Whoosh, he swung. Gran Torino dodged, but this time, he had to actually dodge. The wind pressure ruffled the old man's cape. Better! Gran Torino shouted, bouncing off the wall and kicking Izuku in the side. Izuku grunted, sliding across the floor. But he didn't fall. He used the momentum, spinning on his heel, keeping the lightning active. Again! Gran Torino yelled. For the next 10 hours, the candy shop became a torture chamber. Gran Torino was relentless. He attacked from every angle. He forced Izuku to maintain the full calling state while dodging, while jumping, while thinking. Don't lose focus. Smack. You drop the output in your left leg. Smack. Keep the flow even. By midnight, Izuku was a bruised, sweating mess on the floor. But his bones were intact. You're alive, Gran Torino observed, tossing him a bottle of water. Barely, Izuku groaned, sitting up. He looked at his hand. The green lightning flickered and died. But I didn't break anything. You didn't, Gran Torino agreed. You're stiff. Your movements are linear. You think too much. But you're a vessel now. Not a bomb. He sat down in his armchair, looking at Izuku with a critical eye. You have 1 week, kid. We're going to run this drill until you can maintain that state in your sleep. Then we're going to test it. Test it? Against something that hits back harder than me. Day 4, the city patrol. Kofu City was quiet at night, but it wasn't crime-free. Put this on. Gran Torino threw a yellow cape at Izuku. Is this yours? It's a spare. You don't have a provisional license, so legally you're just a citizen doing self-defense under my supervision. But if anyone asks, you're my sidekick. Deku, was it? Yes, sir. They patrolled the rooftops. For Izuku, this was a revelation. Before, movement was just running. Now, with full calling, 5%, the world was a playground. He could leap across alleyways. He could wall run for short distances. The strength wasn't overwhelming, but it made him feel light. Movement is key, Gran Torino shouted over the wind as they bounded across a warehouse district. All Might relies on brute force to change direction. He just smashes the air. You can't do that. You need to use the environment.